Hey Rupi, thank you for switching on your video as well. Hello Alex. I think we're waiting on maybe 2 or 3 more people and then we can get started. Anjali?
Yes. Just dropping a message now.
Yeah, no worries.
You can get started and take them to
No worries. Hello everybody, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. I'm Mahua. I must have texted you a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. And I'm joined by Anshuman. He's the founder of Avagam as well. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Anshuman.
Sure. Thanks, Mama. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Anshuman. I think all of you would have met, obviously. Hope so, in some capacity. Yes. So we did start Upgum together a couple of years ago now. And well, I'll just give a brief of what I did while I'm taking the session anyway. So, but good to be here. We'll interact a little more through the through the session. Thank you.
Awesome. So diving into the session, let me just share my screen. 1 second. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, awesome. I am just going to present. Great. So basically, we're here to sort of have an introduction to iCubed as well as kind of get into the nitty gritties of project management and then have some work time with stepping into the shoes of the fellows as well. Before we dive in, would love to know how you're coming into the session. I know it's probably been a long day so far. So if you have one word to describe how you're feeling, please share in the chat. Let's just take maybe 30 seconds to do this. Thank you, Philip. I'm glad to hear that. There's 2 words, put it out. Awesome. Thank you, Divya. I hope it stays the same, Alex, through the session as well. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Ruby. Okay, thank you so much. So overall, oh, sorry, Aishwarya, no worries. Take your time. Overall, feeling pretty positive. I'm really glad to hear that. So just going over the agenda once more. Going to get introduced to the iCubed sort of theory and then the 15-month plan as well. Anshuman is going to take us through how to help fellows lead their IQ projects effectively, and then we'll have some work time stepping into fellow shoes. So to get started, Uh, can we start with maybe identifying what the three I's stand for in iCubed? Does anyone remember? Alex, it would be cheating if you shared immediately. So you can come off mute or share on chat, whichever one. Okay, inspire, innovate. Any other ideas? Okay, thank you, Anjali. Just India. Okay, so essentially, the three I stand for ideate, implement, and inspire. So, fellows are encouraged to understand their school ecosystem and ideate a project for their second year, implement the project in their second year, and end with inspiring the school, the community, and the ecosystem. This is sort of a plan that goes over around 15 months, which is why it's called a 15-month plan, not very complicated. And these are a couple of the milestones that fellows go through. I'll give you maybe 30, 30 to 40 seconds to go over it, and then we'll dive into the nitty gritties of it as well. Are we okay to move on? Thank you, Philip. Awesome. So, pretty simple start. I mean, relatively, the fellows kind of identify the problem that their school ecosystem has, try to pilot a solution for this problem that they've identified, develop their theory of change, and then towards the end of their first year, they finalize the project plan. And then they develop an execution plan starting their second year, prepare a project budget, project launch, and then continue to execute this project. um, I'm going to share what the detailed sort of 15-month plan looks like. This is a lot of information at one go, so I apologize about that. But obviously, the problem identification also takes a lot of time on both the fellows and the project manager's part. So they sort of align what their own aspirations are, what the scope of their project would be, identify their problems in their ecosystem, conduct needs surveys, and then understand the collected data, because we wouldn't really want to run a solution that's not needed in the community. And then towards the end of the year, define the problem statement and then design an intervention. The second year will start with a project pilot. It will be planning a pilot intervention, executing the pilot, and then analyzing outputs from the pilot, and then figuring out if something needs to be changed or something needs to be reworked. And then they finally develop their theory of change. They will then present their project plan and then start execution as well. So obviously these are milestones that the fellows and the PMs and the whole ecosystem need to go through as a whole. And project launch and execution also require a lot of, uh, trial and error. The ecosystem needs to be managed consistently and then also be designed for replicability, because eventually that is the goal, that the project could be taken forward either by the school or other fellows that come into the school. Now, with this plan, obviously, another goal is also to ensure that key competencies are built for the fellow and also for the program managers. And something that we'll be focusing on today is program management, particularly involving critical thinking and problem solving. I'm going to pass it on to Anshuman so he can take us through this bit.
Thanks, Mama. Will you be presenting or do I need to share? No, you're good? Okay, thanks. All right, hello everyone. I will give a brief introduction of myself and so what am I doing here? Why why I'm talking about this? So one, I've been working on Afghan, building Afghan for a couple of years now, but before this, I was part of Teach for India as a staff. I was not a fellow, but then I was figuring out how to get into nonprofits, and that was my entry. But before that, I did a liberal arts fellowship from Ashoka University, and before that, I was an engineer. But in the last 2 years, I've also been pursuing my public policy masters. So it's been a while since, honestly, I've taken a session. So if I'm not following some of the principles that you do while taking a session, please excuse me, because it's been a while, honestly, that I'm back in the space. So the way that we started Avagam also was very similar to iCubed, where the idea was we had a lot of fellows within Teach for India who had amazing ideas. And these ideas, when we were talking to the fellows, we figured that some of them are really good ideas if only they could implement them properly and in a structured method. We did have a hypothesis that if all that they follow a decent structure and process and methodology, they can build sustainable organization, and then the organizations can themselves then create much more bigger impact. So we started off with a pilot in one of the cities that's in Ahmedabad. This was back in 2019, 2020. So where we were doing capacity building sessions, very similar to what the IQ plan is, right? Of course, this plan is very extensive, but we started off with some things that we had in place and then tried to implement it there. It worked well. The fellows gave a decent amount of feedback, and then we started working with, say, multiple cities there across. And that's how the I lab, it's called Innovated Lab, Innovation Lab, etc. And it went well that way. So we every year, I think we had about 15 projects coming up, and then out each year we were able to get at least 5 organizations set up. And so that was also we were also trying. And the first year, of course, was a trial and learning method. But we did see success in the first year itself, and then we continued to iterate and go ahead with that. So that the a few things of that, a few things from that experience is what I'll be sharing today. And I'm happy to also discuss largely about, say, early stage social ideas. How does innovation happen? I mean, how do you create an ecosystem so that people are able to innovate better, etc. Happy to share some thoughts and exchange notes on that as well. But largely, what Mawa has given me to talk about is one, how to get started with the projects. I have a little bit of a framework that I would like to introduce to you. You might have heard of it already. It's called systems thinking, but I'll take you through an example to show you how we did the process. And of course, what are some things to keep in mind when you're supporting fellows and when fellows are also executing and ideating the project? What are some challenges that the projects will face? I've compiled a list of things that the fellows faced and we also faced while supporting them. And finally, how do we course correct? Yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'd be speaking for 40 minutes, but I'll introduce like a little topic and then open it up. Please ask questions. Otherwise, I do think it might not be the best use of all of our time as well. Yeah, Noah, next slide. All right. Back to you now. This is this is something that put off from a book. It's called An Introduction to Systems Thinking by Barry Richmond. And I do what I want you to do is, could you tell me what is wrong? If there's anything wrong, not what is wrong, if there's anything wrong with these kind of reasoning. So let's say in order to achieve academic success, the arrow mark means cause and effect. In order to achieve academic success, you need good teachers. Fair. At the same time, you also need good parenting. At the same time, you need good motivation, high motivation from the students, and you need a decent classroom environment to achieve academic success. Is there anything, what do you think? Is there anything more? Is there something missing? Is this reasoning kind of wrong? Or what is wrong? Or if there's nothing wrong, it's completely fine. Uh, Philip, can you expand when you say a lot more? Mm.
I feel the list is not very exhaustive, so can be added on multiple other factors like
Multiple other factors can be added on. Okay, like
maybe the culture of the class in which the teacher is teaching, or
okay,
any other external factors apart from the ones mentioned.
perfect. Okay, so you would basically add a few more factors, and then if you were to represent this visually for me, you would add a few factors and then correct the arrow mark. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think all the arrows pointing towards academic success itself is wrong.
Okay, why so?
It's not just the academic success that we should focus on, right? There are multiple other things. It should be
Okay,
the holistic development, not the mere academics itself.
right. Okay, let's say this project is geared towards the project we're talking about, hypothetically, is towards academic success, and that's why that's kept as the goal. So that then makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Um, Others, any thoughts?
I feel like the percentage of it towards like the individual percentage leading towards academic success for each aspect varies a lot. I feel high motivation is something that has the highest capacity to lead toward academic success. Rest can be good catalyst, but not the sole driving force towards academic success.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Ruby. So I'm going to just ask a couple of follow-up questions to that. So is this, so what you're saying, is this a hypothesis you have? Is this something that you've seen or experienced yourself? Or is there some research that you've read, you've done, which backs this up?
Experience being not
Okay. So,
necessarily like good parenting.
sorry, can you say that again?
Mostly it's coming from experience and also few things that I have noticed over the years in the classroom that I've been with
Okay,
respect to my life as well. So
understood. Got it. Thanks for that. So you would increase the weightage for high motivation. But say, Ruby, if this was someone else, and if this was, say, Mawa, and she has some experience with largely with teachers who contributing to her academic success, so she would put higher weightage on good teachers. Yeah, fair. So that overall, what I'm trying to say is then there's nothing wrong in that, because then it would be different percentages. So if I were to say, just break down the problem and say cause and effect, I'm trying to map it out. This would be a decent way for me to go about it. Yeah, and I'm sure most people also would follow. All of us follow the same process when you're thinking. Somebody raised their hand. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, something that I'm thinking of when I look at this is each of the arrows are directed towards it, but there might be some sort of an interrelation between maybe good teachers, good parents, high motivation, environment, etc. So I feel there could be scattered arrows around the same pen.
Mm, lovely. Perfect. I think that was the answer I was looking at. Actually, can you explain more? Just explain what you're thinking. What's your thinking behind this?
What I am thinking is maybe not all solutions or the cause effect is linear.
Hmm.
I think there might be a lot of interrelated factors that play out as well. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I just think it can't be an independent arrow. Like changing just one thing might not even lead to that, but I think there might be some sort of a coexistence between different things.
Fair, fair. No, sounds good. Definitely. What do others think? I mean, is that you think that what Aishwarya is saying is that a fair way of looking at things? Or is that a plausible way, saying that see the interconnections when a fellow is trying to solve for this problem? Let's say there is challenge with learning outcomes in some grades, and the fellow is trying to solve this, and then they come to you with this and saying that, listen, I do think there are a couple of factors contributing to this problem, and this is how I am representing it. So with what Aishwarya has said right now in terms of the interrelationships, is that something that you would consider? Is that something you would not consider?
Of course, I think that's something we need to consider because we cannot see any of these things in isolation, right?
Hmm,
Uh,
fair.
yeah. So I agree to the Aish's point.
Super. Thank you, Suhail. Thank you. So in that sorry, I'm just trying to extend the conversation a little bit because it's getting a little interesting. Is so then what are some questions you would ask the fellows in order to tease them out on saying is their reasoning fair? Because see, I'm coming to you with this saying that listen, I do think these are the things, but I'm keeping a high percentage. I mean, I will increase the weightage for high motivation, like Ruby said. I do think from my experience, high motivation is what I am going to solve for. So, as a program manager, when the fellow is coming to you and saying that this is the problem I would like to solve, what are some possible questions you would ask them?
I'm not clear about the question. Could you please repeat it?
Okay. So, see, I bring you this. I'm a fellow. I bring this to you. And then I'm taking what Ruby said right now is saying, see, I do think as a fellow, I've seen these multiple factors contributing to academic success. But from my experience, high motivation seems to be the major reason for my students not performing well. So I would like to focus my project on increasing the motivation of students. And that is what I would like to work on, is what I'm looking at, is what is my idea at this moment. So is there any question you would ask to just try to figure out more about or try to give any feedback, any sort of feedback to the fellow or to me in this case? Mhm. Yeah, yes.
So, like my follow-up question would be like sometimes we may think something is the problem, but the other stakeholders or the school might not find it as a problem. So I would
Mm.
clarify that. And then,
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Uh, I'll come back to this in terms of what questions and why I'm asking this question to all of you specifically. But here, what I want to illustrate, Mama, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, here what I want to illustrate is largely what Aishwarya was talking about is there is a lot of interrelationships in a social system. And this is something we have all experienced. This is something that we all know intuitively, right? Saying that, listen, it's just not good teachers leading to academic success. If there are good teachers, they will also increase the engagement with parents. Now, if the parents are also decently engaged, that means the feedback comes back and say that they'll also improve teachers' performance. Fair? The same applies here as well. If the parents are if the parenting is going well and the parents are invested in the children's success, then the children are motivated, quite highly motivated. And of course, if the children themselves are motivated more, they are also going to push their parents a little bit, which improves their parenting skills. And going again there, if you have a classroom full of highly motivated children, the classroom environment generally gets better by itself. And then, if of course, the good classroom environments again leads back to high motivation and so on and so forth, right? There's multiple there's multiple interrelationships that we can draw from each of them, and that's how it's operating at the school level, at a classroom level. So it's not just it's the cause and effect is just not linear, like exactly like Aishwarya said. There's a lot of interdependent factors that are leading to academic success, and this is largely how honestly, this is how most social systems, all social systems operate. This is how we operate, how our families operate, and etc. And that is why one of the things that we figured early on in iLab is to introduce something called as systems thinking to the fellows. That means especially when they're trying to understand the problem and when they're trying to solve something for the first time, the first set of questions, the first set of questions and clarity that we were asking from them was exactly this. If they could really represent the problem, if they could explain what they're trying to do and what their thinking is and what their hypothesis is to us, because we were playing the role of the program managers with them. So we would sit down with them and then ask them that, listen, what's that you want to solve? What do you have in your head? Can you just help us understand what are you trying to do? and then they explain something like pretty much like what I showed before, and then it comes back to this, and then we used to try and tease out a little bit. So overall, the point here is social systems. Mama, can you go to the next slide? Overall, the point is it's a complex system, and it's very hard to figure out what is the cause, what is the effect, what's leading to what here. And this next slide illustrates it further. Is that so academic success is not just the outcome; it is also a cause of the rest of the factors that we were looking at. For example, say good teachers lead to academic success. We all agree on that. But then if there's good academic success in the classroom, it then again improves the motivation for the teachers to perform better the next year. So I've gotten X amount of grade from my students this year, so I'd want to improve that grade next year. So my motivation as a teacher goes up, and that again, in fact, increases the academic success of my students. The same with parents. Parents put some effort into helping their students, helping their children perform well. And once they see that their children are doing well, they would eventually also then improve they would know that that's happening. So there's a feedback involved in the system. um, the same with high motivation, the same with good classroom environment. So in a social system, the cause is also an effect. So it's very difficult to break down things into cause and effects. So overall, it's a complex system. At any day, even in a simple thing like academic success, right? We might consider it a simple thing, but at the end of the day, it's quite complicated and it's quite complex. You draw it out, you map it out. There are multiple things here that will come alive. So now, with this understanding, what point I wanted to make was most of the fellows that come up to you with a lot of problems that they want to solve, a lot of ideas that they come up with, will usually end up thinking in the way that the first slide that was shown, right? It's just arrow mark, arrow mark. See, because thanks, Mama. Because I think I've seen this, and that's why it's leading to this problem. So I'm going to try and solve this for now. But in reality, that's not how it is, right? In the reality, it's much more complicated, and which we all know intuitively, but it's not clearly understood for someone who's trying to start out and try to solve a problem. So as program managers, I think the first thing that would be really helpful for the fellows is to really sit them down and tell them that, listen, it is a complex system that you're working with, and there are a lot of factors here, and there's a lot of interdependency here. So one main question that I would ask any fellow when they started out is, have you understood why do you think high motivation, or why do you think good classroom environment? What kind of reasoning do you have? Do you have any evidence here? Do you have any data? What more do you have here in order to say that what your hypothesis, what you're saying in terms of cause and effect, that is what is the actual problem? So all of this is to tease out, making sure that the fellows have understood the problem really well in order to come to the solution. So this one concept, I think this is some concept. There are multiple books, and we are also happy to do. I think Mawa or Ashik also will let you know about it a little later. But systems thinking as an overall concept is something that you can, as program managers, could read about at different points of time to help the fellows see that the problem is more complex and there are multiple interrelationships here. I'll take a pause if I have any questions, if there's something that's confusing. Yes, Aishwarya. Yeah.
So just a thought that I have around this is, since this is
Yeah.
interrelated and it might not be like a linear cause effect, while identifying problem statements especially, and it's also something noticed with tier twos that it's quite chaotic in terms of the kind of problems that it covers, like a wide range of things that like identifying one particular root cause or like one particular statement has been a challenge.
Right.
Any thoughts about how to maybe approach this?
Sorry, when you say it's chaotic, is the problem statement chaotic, or is the number of things they want to solve for, is that too many?
I think it's both. Um,
Okay.
so I think the number of things they want to solve is too many, hence their problem
Yeah.
statement is also very, very broad.
Right. And sorry, I'm going to ask this question back to you. Is so try and give an example so that it's a little more clear. Is saying, when you say chaotic, are they doing too many things, and where did it start from in this? So why are they solving for a lot of chaotic problems? Or I'm sorry, why are they solving too many things at once?
Yeah. So I think one thing becomes about some aspects of classroom culture, but there's also
Okay.
a potential that I'm just taking one example of a project.
Mm.
It is the problem identified is that students probably don't behave that well. I'm not able to share the exact statement though.
So no
Uh,
worries. Yeah.
and they intended to do something related to student leadership, or it evolved to
Okay.
become student leadership. It was not how it started off initially. And there
Right.
was a need to include teachers, parents, students, everyone. So the kind of activities that are chosen are
Yeah.
not completely aligning to the problem and in its entirety, because it's
Okay.
about discipline overall.
Understood.
Yeah.
Got it, Ashwita. Thank you. From what briefly that you shared, what two things I'm able to make out is, see, the problem largely is saying the students in terms of discipline in the classroom, but all the rest of the things that you mentioned is pretty much the solution. Student leadership is a solution. Solving for everything else involving parents, teachers, and multiple other stakeholders, these are all solutions. These are not really telling me more about the problem. So the second point that I wanted to make here is that while starting out, one of the major things that we were had a lot of difficulties helping the fellows with was they would come with solutions and then confuse that for the problem. Or um, it's a difficult thing to get across. It's a difficult thing to break out, because when I see something, when I see when you, of course, the first thing, um, for example, if there's a pothole on the road and then you're going on the road, the first thing that would come to your mind is to fix the pothole. So, but then there might be multiple other reasons why, why there is a pothole that every other time that comes in, because then it rains, there are more potholes, the construction is not done well, the government is not giving enough funds, the constructor, probably the contractor is corrupted, multiple other things, because why the pothole is happening. So just putting another layer of asphalt on the pothole will not solve the problem. And then we get into that habit again. And something that we observed with the Teach for India fellows also was this, that they would think about the solution first and then try to force with the problem to the solution. And that is why then it goes in multiple directions. Like, now I want to bring student leadership, and that will solve student discipline. And then you start adding everything else there. So the larger thing, I would say, not the way that you do it actually, is you start in the initial phase only, in the problem identification phase. You really have to ask them a lot of questions. You have to help them tease them out, ask them a lot of questions, and help them, or ask them to basically explain the problem in a visual way like this. Try to make sure that you get their understanding of how are they thinking about the problem. Are they confusing the problem for the solution? How many assumptions do they really are working with? Because every single thing, every single arrow here is an assumption, is based on some assumption. Now, is it an assumption? Is it something that's rooted in reality? Are they making things up? Is it not clear? So once all that is done, is once you come to a problem statement. The major issue with having a chaotic problem statement is that people are using multiple bunch of assumptions, and then it all comes together, and then it all gets all mixed up. So I would say the best time to solve for that is when they're ideating, not while they're implementing, because then it gets too difficult, right? I've already put so much time, and then my resources, my project plan is done, and I've already involved the parents, I've already involved the teachers. So it's hard to pull back at that point. So here at this stage, I think with all of you, most of you being year one fellows is my understanding, right? And then you'll be supporting the fellows for the first time. Yeah. Okay. So then this is the best time to do it. So the first step you do is make sure that you have understood what kind of reasoning the fellows are coming up with. Does that answer your question? I know it's a very all around way. Yeah. But I'll write that I've written down the steps, and I'll give all of that to you. Yeah. Thanks, Anjali. Yeah, thank you so much. That helps. Okay. Any other questions? Or any other thoughts also? That's completely fine. Great. Oh, I think we can bring the next slide. Yeah. So all this was to say that the social change was not the way that you see it. It's more complicated. There are multiple factors. It's massive. It's not something that can be solved in a year or 2 years or 3 years. It's a long-term process. So you probably pick a very small part of this big complex puzzle called a social system and try to work on it, try to understand it so that you get an understanding. So the principle that we started with for the fellows in the program that we were conducting was, so that you take time, so make sure that the next 15, for example, 15, if it was a 15-month project, our basic statement objective to them was use the 15 months to understand the problem. Make sure you build a solid understanding of the problem by trying out different solutions, but make sure at the end of the day, you have, at the end of 15 months, you have better clarity about the problem than you did about, say, 10 months ago. That was what we were trying to go for. Yeah, Amawa, next slide. So that now that system thinking and complexity and etc. is very theoretical, that's how we all know it works. But then the big question is, okay, this is all good, this is all nice, it all makes sense, but what do we do with it? How do we really make it come alive, or how is it really helpful? That is why we also not came up, but we also try to use a process, making sure that the fellows follow a particular process, which then will help them understand the chaos and the systems and complexity a little bit better. So this is a brief process that we had followed for in iLab. BTCP here means be the change projects, which Teach for India, that's the terminology they used. So what we started out with was I think we were running a 6 month or 9 month program. So the first 3 months were only given for the first step here. Do you know the problem? In this first step, right? We basically asked the fellows to go on ground, do primary research, do secondary research, do observations, and do the needs analysis, come back with the data, and then answer the question that's saying, do you know the problem? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? So we give them a lot of information. We give them a lot of time to try and do that. So come up with all of this reasoning, to come up with data, to understand the hypothesis they were working with. And once the problem statement was a little more clear, then we came into the scope and objective. This is the second part of the answer to the question, Aishwarya, you were asking, is they're trying to do too many things. That major problem, trying to solve too many things comes from the scope, because fellows and most of us do not add a scope to the projects we are working with. So what happens, we understand the problem, we're in a rush to implement stuff, and then we just go ahead and try to do a lot of things. That is why we put this in between. So we sat down. Once the understanding from the crowd was a little bit clear, we would sit down and ask the fellows and everybody that, listen, what scope? You need to add a boundary around this project. And saying there are 10 things to solve for, there are 10 things that you want to do, but what is it that you can realistically achieve in the next 15 months? Add a boundary around that. And the larger point that we were making to them was that, listen, it's not a question of if you will do this, if you will not do this, what will you do? It was a question of when will you do this? So it was the question of what are you going to do in the next 15 months? And then what are you going to do the next step? So it was largely adding a boundary to make sure that they're not doing too many things at once. And once the scope and objective was prepared, then the next phase was, of course, program design and hypothesis. Once they come up with a decent amount of program designing and hypothesis, you see here, until this step, until program design and hypothesis, everything is on paper. Everything is just on paper. Everything is largely on conversations and what the research they're conducting, right? This is all conversations, all talking that they're doing with multiple sets of people trying to understand the problem. And once they're at this stage of creating a hypothesis, is when they would get into the prototype stage. So then they try and come up with saying that I have this hypothesis, I think this solves for this problem. So now I'm going to prototype and see that. And we also place a lot of emphasis on the monitoring and evaluation aspect of it, even in the prototype stage, right? If I'm prototyping solution, I would ask them, listen, what are the things that you're measuring for? How do you know it's working? How do you know it's not working? And once it comes to a decent stage, the results come to a decent stage, we would again sit and evaluate. As the program managers, we would look at, say that if it's working, if it's not working, what's working. You go back to the loop and say that in your program design and hypothesis, what are the points that got validated and what didn't get validated, and then do the loop again. So, and finally, once you have some valid results here, then we would sit down and discuss that, listen, what are the different possibilities for your project at the end of the 15 months or 12 months? Say that given what you've achieved and given what you've understood, what are some aspects that are open to you? And some of the aspects at that time that were open to them was they could partner with an existing organization, they could hand the project over to the next set of the fellows, they could themselves take the path of them being an entrepreneur, or they could just do the project on the side while they're figuring out something else. So they this was a process that we added here to ensure that that whole complexity gets a little bit clear as they do all of these steps. And it's a balancing act, honestly, at the end of the day. I would not say that system you have to sit with the complexity and try to keep on understanding what's happening, how it's happening, because it's an endless process. So that is why we also thought you need to bring in the whole tool of this is pretty much project management and project planning, right? What process that we put down here is both of that has to align in order to come up, in order for the fellows to do a decent job with it. Yeah. Moa, next slide. Yeah. So what we learned was it is the balancing act. Um, because one, understanding any set of social problem will take years, and I don't think anybody who's worked in the sector for longer also would claim that they know the problem, because big organizations, massive organizations also tend to redo their theory of change when they learn about new things. So it's a set thing that understanding the problem will take a lot of years. Systems thinking and design thinking and all of these, honestly, they sound nice. But what we felt was they provide good frameworks, the good starting points, but then it won't get us anywhere. So that is why project management and having the quantitative aspect of things will make these frameworks come alive. And honestly, we cannot put one over the other. Both processes are important. You need to marry the process basically based on how much time you have, how much resources you have, how much bandwidth somebody has. So these are a few things that we learned over the time. Sorry, Moa, can you go back to this? So any sort of questions, thoughts around this is around the whole process that I spoke about, that pain. Yeah. All right. Moa, I think then you can go to the challenges bit itself. Huh. Right. So common challenges, like Aishwarya, with you, the question that you asked, right? What is happening with the fellows trying to do too many things? Is one first thing we realized after working with few of them over the years was fellows tend to work with a lot of assumptions. They make a lot of assumptions about what's happening, how the students are feeling, what they think is true, what they think is not true, everything. So there's a lot of assumptions the fellows work with. So one of the major challenges was to make sure that we differentiate what is really happening versus what you're thinking. And that we try to do with the whole secondary research, primary research part of it, is saying that, listen, go collect. If you're telling me that this is happening and this is something that you have observed, can you give more information about each of these, and can you collect some information here to just substantiate your reasoning? So one, fellows work with a lot of assumptions that leads to creating hypotheses, and there is the cause and effect models in their head, which then becomes your project plan, and then it becomes too chaotic down the line. The second common thing that we saw fellows do, and one of the challenges was, most of them ended up setting very ambitious goals, like two massive goals, that saying that we will solve for discipline in 1 year, or we will solve for the foundational challenges in a year or two, for all children, or for all for all students in the classroom. But honestly, we all know that these are a little bit far from reality. And what setting a lot of ambitious goals did to them was, down the line, when they realize that, oh, this is not happening, it's not progressing the way it's supposed to go, there's a lot of dip in motivation. And once that dip in motivation happens, it's a little hard to bring it back for themselves. And as a program manager also, it'll be a little difficult. So that was the other challenge. What we tried and did was, again, we asked them a lot of questions. We told them that, listen, do you want to tone down a little bit, given that you have a lot to do already and you're doing this on the side? What are the realistic, what's possible in this 1 year? Tell us just what's possible in 1 year, and then adjust the goals a little bit. The third big challenge was they just wanted to do too many things, involve all the stakeholders possible in the project, solve for all of the things. You do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, everything in a single project, and finish it off. That was the major challenge. That was another major challenge. The way, again, we tried and solved for that was, in the beginning, before they started implementing only, we said that, listen, you got to add a boundary to your project. Because if you don't have that boundary, and then if you are doing that whole going around doing a lot of things, it's not helping them and any of the resources as well. The fourth big challenge was, there was a rush to implement. Very quickly they wanted to just implement the solution and then go ahead and try and do things. But we did hold them back and tell them that, listen, go understand the problem a little bit better before coming back and implementing. The other biggest challenge was there was a bias towards the solution, meaning that they were married to the solution, married to their idea, and it was difficult to pull them away something that, listen, it's okay, keep that idea, but can you tell us more about what problem, what is happening, what are the different ways that you can solve this problem? The other biggest challenge was there was some amount of discomfort with data. And when I say data, it's just not numbers, it is just any sort of data. So there's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of, oh, he told me this, I told this, there's a lot of generalization also. I think a lot of them they heard one or two students speaking about something and then they generalized it to everybody else. So they tried and most of them do that very often because it's very emotional. Um, uh, and I would imagine fellows for the first time are interacting with students like this in this environment. So it usually happens. So I speak to someone for the first time and I've not lived the experience in student living. And when I get that information, I tend to think that everybody else is feeling the same. But they just used to generalize a lot of it. So the way we solved for that was, again, we asked them to collect some amount of information before making that case. So these are some of the common challenges. This something that you will face. I'm sure you've faced also in some capacity when in the initial few months, 3-4 months, they tend to do all of this, and then it just gets confusing after a while, and then it gets too overwhelming, and then there is a dip in motivation, and after that, the project just goes a little downhill. So these are some common things that we had seen. The way that we did um, try and put a few structures for this, which is in the next slide, I think, Paloma. Some principles that we kept in mind while supporting the fellows was we did tell them that, listen, do not marry the solution, do not be so tied up to the idea that you have. You do marry the problem, just try and understand the problem a little better, use the space, be comfortable with uncertainty. Things are not going to go the way that you thought. Say, I was looking at one of the sheets that I think you shared. A lot of them were saying that parents are not attending, their attendance is going down, there's uncertainty whether they'll attend the next session or not. But see, that's how it is with social systems. You need to be comfortable with uncertainty. Some things will work, some things will not work. So that was the other principle. The other main other principle we're looking at was agility. Is if because we're all learning about the problem, we're all learning about the system a little bit more with every day. There will be changes coming in the project plan. There will be things that you need to do differently. So you need to be agile. And the other big thing was make the reasoning explicit. When I said they make a lot of assumptions, or they're going by they're generalizing information from few sets of people, so make sure there is explicit reasoning involved, which again will get solved somewhat by data orientation. So some of the principles that we kept in mind as program managers when we were interacting with the fellows and designing programs for them. Yes, I think there's just one more slide on this is how can you help the fellows course correct in this early stage. Is one, just start by asking a lot of questions, a teaser of which I did in the first 10 minutes. I'm not sure how helpful that was, but then just try and ask a lot of questions. Try and ask them, why are you saying this? What do you mean by this? Where is this coming from? Are you feeling this? Are you seeing this? Is there data about this? All of these kind of questions. Make sure you ask a lot of questions for their clarity and for your clarity as well. The second important thing I would say is it'd be good for you as program managers to invest some time into learning about the problem. You sit down. If someone is coming and telling you about, listen, there's a problem with discipline, just try and understand yourself about why is this happening or why might this happen. Do that exercise yourself. The other one is clarify the assumptions, be their team member, act as if you're their own team member, as not as a manager. Sit down with them, be their teammate and say them, listen, what do you know? And this is what I know. And this is my perspective here, and clarify their assumptions as well. Readjust the goals that they're setting for themselves. Here, try to lower the stakes for the fellows a little bit. Tell them that it's okay to experiment. Tell them it's okay to fail. Tell them they need not be hitting all the goals that they're hitting, that they're putting on themselves, because then it becomes too stressful for the fellows themselves. So lower the stakes a little bit in whatever capacity possible from your side, so that it's easier on the fellows. Build some data capabilities in them. Is how do you read data? How do you understand data? This not be numbers, right? It's not number crunching, but general comfort with data. Build that comfort with data to them. Be open to possibilities in your with the fellows that you're working in the projects that are there. There will be course correction, there will be multiple changes, but be open to possibilities. If you hear a fellow saying that, listen, we tried something else from our project plan and that might work better, be open to that possibility that might become the major solution itself. And finally, sit down and anticipate some risks and challenges with them before they start implementing. Is saying, given all of the things that you're trying to do, what are some risks and challenges that might come up? Add your input, so they are also aware that these are some challenges that might come up down the line. So a few things that you could do in the initial phase. Yeah. I think that's largely from my side. Yep. Yes, Anjali.
I just wanted to add on to the challenges part. It's a question also that I have. Like one thing you talk about discomfort with data, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've seen some people be very resistant to projects itself, like the idea of embarking on that 15-month journey.
Okay.
Where for coming into the fellowship itself, you change, you're adapting to the environment, the challenges, all of that. And not just data, but all the other aspects in the 15-month plan have also been very new for them. Be it, for example,
Okay.
designing questionnaires or focus group discussions,
Right.
and then coming up with the project plan. When everything is new, I've seen that inertia set in, like, oh my God, now how do I proceed? Every single thing, that
Yeah.
extra effort has to be put in. So how
Right.
kind of, you talked about lowering the stakes, right? How to kind of navigate that kind of situation. And the other thing is, I've seen some fellows being great at problem identification, right? They're able to get to what's happening in schools, but their
Okay.
personal interest doesn't align with that problem, right? Maybe, for example, just to give you a random example, there's a fellow who's very interested in, okay, I just sports is coming to me right now. Sports. It's not a real example. I'm making this up.
Sure.
So,
No worries.
for example, they're very interested in sports and want to take that forward. But the school
Okay.
really needs maybe child engagement and building relationship with the community, but that's not so exciting for them. So how to kind of
Okay.
marry the fellow's personal interest with what's actually happening in school as the real problem.
Got it. Thanks, Anjali. For the first part of the question is there's a lot of inertia. If I have understood this correctly, sorry, there's a lot of inertia with trying and doing all of these things, especially in the first 3 months because they have a long thing to go for. A few things we tried to do was that in terms of lowering the stakes was we presented these things that they're doing. If you can go back, Mawa, to the process slide. We presented it as a skill building thing for them. Is saying that, listen, if you do all of this is not just good practice for your own project for only for iCubed, but it is just general good project when you're trying to solve anything going ahead in your life. And what we tried nicely to do with especially Teach for India fellows, because placement is a big thing. What we nicely also did was in some way did tell them that, listen, if you do this, and these are all the skills that pretty much any organization looks for. So you try and do this with your own project, learn that skill yourself, build that capability, and it's just not for your project. It will help your classroom. It will help your own teaching. It will help your own career itself overall. So even forget if this is not particularly this project doesn't kick off or something happens in the project, that's completely okay. But all these things will help you in the future. So we try to attach it that way so that they know there's an internal motivation here, as opposed to someone telling that, listen, you got to do these 1 to 3 steps. Something in addition to that, what we tried and tell them was, whenever we told them about all these steps, we told them why it is required, and not just that these are the steps you're supposed to do. We gave them enough reasoning to say, why do you need to do primary research? Why do you need to do secondary research? Why do you need to do needs analysis? We completely told them, give everything that we knew about why do you need to do this in front of them, so they understood it to some capacity that how is it going to help them. And the feedback, thankfully, we received from fellows was also very similarly. A lot of them applied the same principles while they're preparing for interviews. Some of them landed very different kinds of jobs also, and it just did not help them only in this project but overall as well. So there was a little bit of lowering the stakes and making sure that these are more relevant not only for the project but generally for themselves as well, that we did. The second one around sports and marrying their personal interests, I would say because entrepreneurship or doing something of your own is a very personal undertaking. Um, if that's not sitting well, it might be very difficult because it will not go forward, right? In that case of the person with someone who's interested in sports, but the school is not allowing them to do. if the fellow is not really willing to let go of that working on sports and physical activity wala problem, uh, I would honestly at that point suggest the fellow that if there's any other school that they can work with, to see and to check and see if that's a viable idea that they want to take forward, as opposed to just helping, because it won't work, right, Anjali? I mean, I'm interested in something, but if I'm put in a role in which I'm not really interested, I'll not be doing the best of my work. So it just gets a little demotivating that way. So does it make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Folks, any questions here? But I think there are a couple of year two program managers, right? Program managers, Aishwarya, and one more. Sorry. Are these some of the challenges? Are these common challenges I've listed down? Have you seen these challenges coming up frequently? Is this a decent list? Is the question.
Yeah, I think it covers most of it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. If there are no questions, I think we would what we'd do, Moa, is maybe we have 30 minutes more. So we could get them to actually apply this a little bit and see how it goes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anshuman.
Yeah.
So just
For yeah. For
go
this,
ahead, go
Mama,
ahead.
sorry, I was thinking what we could do to make it a little more interesting is we could divide the set of program managers. Just let me know, Anjali, Mama, if this is and all of the rest of you, of course, if this is a decent idea. It would be nice if a few of you play the roles of fellows and few of you play the role of the program managers in this activity, where the set of fellows end up choosing the problem, and then you draw out your hypothesis, give reasons on why you're going to do that, and let's see the program manager role that whoever the others are playing could ask questions and see if there are any gaps in the reasoning from the other side. Can we do that, Mawa,
Would
instead
it
of?
make sense? Sorry, would
Yeah,
it
I
make
know.
sense for maybe like Aishwarya and Sohail, because they are working on current year two projects, to maybe sort of be the fellows as well, just to come up with
Yeah,
like
yeah,
relevant problems?
yeah, I'm not sure, I'm just floating this idea. If this works, we can,
Hmm.
otherwise we can go ahead with what you had already thought of.
What do you guys think? Open to suggestions as well. Yeah. Yeah, Philip?
I have one question with respect to the previous slide.
Okay. Yeah.
And how can I help course correcting the fellow? There's be open to possibilities. So,
Yeah.
like, there are some cases in current year twos that like the fellow proposing some changes which is last minute, and the entire course of the project changes. So, which
Right.
it results in change in what they initially started with, and again
Mm.
that gives some difficulty with respect to time or
Mm.
the resources. So, like, how do we like know when to say no or when to like? So, is there something on that you could share over?
Got it. Right. So something that we were trying to do was so we were engaging with we were running an independent program in Teach for India, right? We were not technically the program managers. So some of the objectives that we were working with was a little different. So one clarification, Philip, you might in this to this answer will have to come from the Bhumi as an organization and iCubed program, right? Is what are some of the things that you're looking for at the end that fellows do? Is the metric for success that the fellows are able to implement the program really well, and then they stick to the plan and all of these, right? If these are the things that you are also working with and fellows are also working with, it might get a little tricky uh, in your case, especially if the plan is changing. But with entrepreneurship and especially innovation, it is subject to change within reasonable limits, right? If they're entirely changing their problem statement from student discipline to sports, I mean, we know that that's not something that's in reasonable limit. But then within the same problem, if they're still trying to solve the same problem, but then they've discovered a different way of doing it, and you sense that it's going in the right direction, there's enough amount of information from the ground which is substantiating this. There has to be some reason why they're changing it, right? There is an initial, it might be problem with what they're doing right now, it's not going well, or they might have found some other new information. So if all of those are in reasonable limits, then we would probably go ahead and say that, listen, it's okay, try and do the other thing and see what happens. The another way of looking at that is, again, ask them to do pilots instead. So they have a plan already and they're saying they'll do something differently. Now, both parties, as program managers, we also don't know what's working, what will work the best. They also don't know what will work the best. So now in this case, we'll need more information. So ask them to just pilot this other solution in some capacity. So when I say pilot, um, say they want to implement a new set of curriculum, or they want to try a new teaching method. Instead of teaching for an entire hour for a different subject, ask them to teach for 10-15 minutes in 10-15 minute blocks and see what happens. So try and do a little bit of piloting there with respect to any of the solution, any other solution they're coming up with, and see if it's better than the initial plan. If then, I would say that go ahead with the changed plan. Yeah, as long as the problem is still the same and it's not really changing too much. Yeah,
Got it.
because with innovation and entrepreneurship, it's in the initial stages, so might as well give them enough room to do it. Yes, Aishwarya. Yeah.
I had another, question or
So
like thought around how to so something that I've noticed, it's there are times when a problem statement is shared, the
hmm,
solution or impact that is created is like the exact positive framing of the problem statement.
correct. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so how is that addressed? Any thoughts about that? I can give you
Okay. Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
example if needed. If the
So
I mean,
I think I have a fair idea. It's saying that, let's say, I will solve for students' attention because there's a lack of attention in my classroom. Is that
yeah.
something like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's again a symptom of, so whenever you hear that, right, there's a lack of something happening somewhere, that already is pointing towards the person who's thinking and who's coming up with the problem statement is operating from a solution lens already. Is because I have the solution around saying, oh, attention is I know that the attention is a problem. I want to solve for it. That is why I'm going to frame it as lack of attention. So try and avoid anything that try and help fellows also overcome this a little bit, is whenever they're framing something as lack of X. So X happens to be the solution because it's just straightforward, right? Okay, there's no water. When there's lack of water, so we'll provide water. It just becomes a straightforward solution in all cases. So anywhere that you sense this, it did not be worded in the same way, of course, but anywhere you sense this is happening, that means it's the deeper, the underlying thing is they're looking at the solution first and then fitting the problem to that. So you have to make them realize it. You're saying, are you serious? Where is this coming from? What's happening? And push them a little bit, honestly, in the initial few bit when they're thinking about the problem, push them a little bit. Ask them, how do you know? Is there something else? What are these other things? That's why I showed you the systems thinking or interrelationships initially, is also just for you also to see that there are some ways you can do this, and that's one of the framework you can use. The best thing that has worked for us so far is we ask the fellows to draw diagrams like this. So we ask them that, listen, you're going to solve this. Give us what you're thinking. Put arrow marks. Put all of this and show us it. However messy it is, just show us. And whenever they used to explain, right? Oh, we think X is happening because of Y, and then we would go and say, where is this coming from? What is underneath that arrow mark? And then clarify a little bit. And it helped. It did really help. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the one common challenge about scope, right? There is scope is interesting because there are some fellows who are very passionate and they want to do a lot of things and they really want to become entrepreneurs, or they really want to solve for that problem. So with some fellows, it's the scope conversation will not go well. because whenever you try to add boundaries in their project and ask them to do a little less, they will not agree. They will give multiple reasons. So some fellows, the other way to also um, help fellows score correct is, see, some fellows, it's again based on personality and what they're good at, what personality, what kind of people they are, right? And if you do also see that amongst these common challenges, it's one of them is just they're going out of scope and that's how they are as people, might as well let that be. You need not also be so strict and apply the same template across all fellows. Because with entrepreneurship, especially personal projects, I have a personal interest. I'm interested in sports. I'm interested in working on discipline. I'm interested in working on leadership. So that's really my passion. And then you just let that passion go. With the process, what we were trying to do was just make sure that you're following a decently set process, which will lead you to a better outcome than before. That was what we were trying to tell them. Is listen, saying that, listen, we don't know more about leadership or sports than the fellow, of course, because they're working on the ground, but we don't know more. But what we can tell you is if you put this process, it will lead to a better outcome. So if you are interested in reaching that better outcome, just follow the process and things will become clear. Yeah. Do we go ahead with the activity more than? Okay. Yeah.
We can go ahead with your suggestion. I think it might be a good idea as well. Aishwarya or Suhail, if you want to play the role of the fellows, or if you want to kind of maybe state a current problem that your fellows are facing or trying to solve for, and then maybe as a group we can also try to come up and answer these couple of questions. Yeah. Okay. Over to you then, Aishwarya, if you wanna share any issues. No worries, Sohail, that's fine.
So I can just share any problem statement that's
Yeah.
all right. Okay,
Yeah.
just give me a second.
No worries. Or if anyone else, I think even year one fellows, what we had initially thought was with the current conversations that you're having with the fellows, if there's any overwhelming problem that they are identifying in their school ecosystem, we can discuss that as well. Maybe let's take a minute, and then
Meanwhile, Mama, is it okay if I share an example of that problem identification
yeah.
things that the fellows did? Yeah. This is one of the projects we worked with Nazariya. They're a registered organization. They're doing well right now. They're based out of Mumbai, and this was their first attempt at explaining the problem space to us. And this is what they tried and did. Is this was the challenge that, see, you see that Ashwar, what we're talking about is, and they started with saying lack of access and education in digital arts is necessary. Is so the answer to the solution was already in the challenge that they put up, and the answer to the problem that they're trying to solve. This was just the first step that they did, first example, but they did at least give a lot of reasons. Again, lack of representation and some socioeconomic barriers, systemic gaps, and they come up with a lot of other reasoning, etc., etc. You're just overall, it's messy. It's definitely messy. It's not something that can be easily understood. But then it's a good start. It just helps you as a program manager realize what they're thinking. It also makes it clear for the fellows themselves on saying, "Oh, I didn't think of that."
Thank you, Anshuman. I think Suhail shared a problem that one of the year one fellows is facing, that many of the parents are illiterate. So the fellow wants to work on adult literacy with the parents specifically. So I'll just reshare the couple of questions that we had come up with. If we if we can maybe take a couple of minutes to put this problem into context about this is the problem that the parents of the students are illiterate and they want to work on adult literacy. Could we maybe take 2 to 3 minutes about one, how would you solve this problem personally, and then try to answer a couple of the other questions. Anyone can unmute and share.
Sorry, are we answering the second question or are we just asking questions?
No, so I think so. We'll start, maybe could start working on the problem that Suhail shared.
Yeah, okay.
So, what is a solution that you would come up with for this problem essentially?
Got it. Is it okay if I just ask a question and tweak
No, go ahead.
tweak what we're trying? All right,
Yeah.
Suhail and others, etc. So the way that if a fellow would come to me and ask, put this as a problem statement, the first thing that I would ask them and ask you also is is illiteracy really a problem? How I mean, just think about it. I mean, I'm asking you also to start thinking in that direction. Is when a fellow comes and tells you that most of the parents are literate, the definitely the answer right there is then provide literacy is right. But then if you really want to understand why and how you can understand the problem a little better, is just try and understand and ask them is illiteracy a problem, and especially for the parents that they're working with, right? And why is it a problem? This is as the second question, is given the set of parents they're working with. For example, you need not be literate, be working and making money, and if it's economically working out for them and they're all doing well for themselves, which is just an assumption, right? If they're doing well for themselves, then why is illiteracy a problem? What's happening because of that? So these are the bunch of questions that I would generally start with, even before coming to say thinking of what solutions are there. Yeah. Yes, Philip. Yeah.
So I have a doubt. So as per what Suhail mentioned, like I don't see, like again, as you mentioned, like literacy of parents is a problem. Like so, like should I work on these prompts with respect to what Suhail mentioned, or like maybe connect why the actual problem, why the fellow had mentioned the literacy is about, and then work on those what I
Yes.
feel the problem might be. I couldn't get that clarity. So
yeah. So Taliban, what I'm trying to say is, as program managers, the first thing you need to also try and do is when a fellow puts a problem like this, try and help them understand, and also you yourself understand, is whether what they're saying is the actual problem. Because if illiteracy is not a problem, say probably the issue is them not being able to find jobs. And maybe literacy is not the challenge, it's just access to markets is the challenge because they're not able to access job opportunities, right? That might be happening, but the fellows are thinking, oh, they're not educated and that's why they're not able to find jobs. Maybe the actually what's happening on the ground is that they don't have access to job opportunities, and literacy is not playing a role here. So if you put literacy there, that's not solving the real problem here, right? So why in the first case do the fellows want to solve for illiteracy? is it a problem? Is it not a problem? And if it is a problem, how is it affecting their lives? So what I'm trying to tease out here is if the parents are literate, what will change in their lives? Yes, yes, amazing. Yeah, sorry, it's just the answer. Yeah, perfect. So the question that you then ask the fellows is what are specific outcomes do you envision for the parents by the end of this initiative? So what are things that the parents will be able to do if they're literate enough? And fellows will tell you a bunch of things. And then you again ask them why, and see their reasoning there. Yeah. Just so it's a conversation, Philip, here. So there's no set process here, right? There's definitely no set process because they're also understanding the problem for the first time. You're also understanding that problem for the first time. And all of us, I think any of us in this room, we are not experts on all the subjects. These are all new information for us. So what we can help the fellows do is bring in some clarity. And the way you bring in clarity is just ask all questions, be broad, push them a little bit and everything. Yes. Is that clear?
Yes.
Great. Yeah. Yes, Divya, access to information like schemes, then maybe it's an information gap that they need to solve for and not for literacy. So then that becomes another solution, right? So this is all parts of discovering the problem so that the fellows are able to understand this better. Yeah.
Anshuman, just a question here. I
Yeah.
think came up earlier also, like the fellow's interest is lying specifically on maybe adult literacy. Let's say after
Okay.
conversation, it is coming to a point that maybe the upskilling is required maybe for specific schemes and policies for that particular community.
Hmm.
But still, what if the fellow is very firm and assertive to do the adult literacy part and not
Hmm.
maybe focus on the actual the maybe the schemes or the policies. I'm not sure. Like I'm just seeing this as one challenge.
Okay. Got it, Divya. Thank you. To answer the question, see, I don't think it's a good question, one, because the fellows might themselves feel that adult literacy is something they want to work on. But when you ask that question in the way that Ruby, oh sorry, this was Ruby, right? What Ruby mentioned in terms of what specific outcomes do you envision for the parents by this end of this initiative? What do you want parents? What do you want to really see the parents do and change and do differently so that it's better for their outcome? You would also discover, I think the fellow is more interested in helping the parents. That's the problem. So they would want to work with parents is probably the major passion that they're working with, and adult literacy happens to be one of the solutions. So you can also help them understand that, listen, what you're interested, I think, is largely around solving for helping parents of the children and the communities that you're working with. And there are many ways to do that. So because adult literacy happens to be a solution, right? And because the domain is a little broader than that, is working with parents and communities. So you can help them also see that a little bit better. That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lovely, Suhail. Yeah, questions you may ask is, are the parents ready for this? Yes. Okay, and what time and space will you give the opportunity? Okay, I'll just come one by one. Yeah. Right. Philip, this is a brilliant question again to ask. Is parents being illiterate, is that the problem? Or how does parents being illiterate play out on the students is the problem? Perfect. Lovely, amazing question, because then you figure out, is the fellow then interested in solving for the students' improvement, or is the fellow actually interested in solving for the parents and the community problem? So that's a brilliant question to ask. Ruby, again, how did you plan to understand the needs and interests in this project that you want to pick up? Amazing, perfect. You start with this so that you know how much data they've been able to collect. Is there some comfort? Are they generalizing? Are they specifying, etc.? Suhail, for the first question that you've come up with, are the parents ready for this? Is you're then asking a question about their solution, right? Because you've also, I think here you're also assuming that they will be working on adult literacy. So asking a question that's saying, are you ready for this, is going into the solution territory at this point. So you're still not, this is going a little bit there. The second question is, what time and space will give you the opportunity to solve this problem? Can you expand on this a little bit if you're able to unmute?
Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So my first question is like, uh, what I meant by the first question was like, if this is something that you have identified, the fellow have
Okay, okay.
identified, there is a problem that which is the parents are illiterate. So the question I will ask
Mm-hmm.
is that is the parents ready for that, or
Okay,
like
okay.
you are finding that they are illiterate and
Mm,
that's causing some problem in the learning levels of the children, or they are not able to invest time in the teaching part of the children. So if
right.
you go to the parents as a solution for that as adult literacy, how much the
Hmm.
parents are okay about it, or how much
Hmm.
their socioeconomic situation is ready to
Okay,
accept this solution from your side. This is first thing where I that
understood.
question came from. Second question is that if they are ready,
Yeah,
from the given time and space that the parents are having, most of them are working professionals,
yeah.
where are you going to teach them this time, and how much time you're getting to teach that, and in the
Right,
given
right.
time frame of 2 years or 1 year, how much you will be able to succeed in that. So these are the areas where these questions were coming. Yeah.
Understood, Sway. Thank you so much. Again, what I think from what you just said, you are talking about the solution with them because you're also discussing adult literacy programs without before there's a step before that, right? Is saying that is adult literacy really the problem? Is the illiteracy the problem, or is there something more? So here, when you ask questions like this in the first time that they're proposing the problem, you also, I think by mistake, you might end up into going into the solution phase already because if you're asking questions around what time and space, and they will start thinking about how will you implement the program and not as and not in the direction of is this the problem, is this an actual need, is this an actual problem, those kind of questions. The same, I think the same with Ruby, your question on have you explored any external resources or partnership? This is going into solutioning, right? Because you're saying adult literacy is the program, so this might go into solutioning right there.
So I was coming from a point of view that instead of
Mm.
making it a project for yourself, like if you
Uh,
feel this is a problem, maybe there are already organizations available who can take this up. Maybe you can look at some other aspect.
Perfect, perfect. Got it. Sounds good. This is for them to collect more information about it. Yeah. Ah, super. Yeah. So, Mawa, I know I've changed the order of the questions and it's a different activity, but yeah. Sundar Rajan is what are the symptoms of this problem? Perfect. Amazing. See, this is a brilliant question to ask. It will definitely get the fellows thinking and saying that, oh, but let have a and it'll be nice, it's a nice conversation to have as well as saying, is this how is this affecting the children in the classroom and what effect it might have and what will really change? It's a good question. Any other questions? Anything else that you can ask to get a better understanding, help the fellows see the problem a little better? Aishwarya, I think I'll just call out names who have probably not asked the questions. Anjali, Aishwarya, yeah, I think. Anything else you might ask? Okay, if there's not much, I think Mawa, sorry for changing the order of the order of the activity, but I hope no, I did see that it might help to understand what I was trying to say before better.
Mhm.
Yes, I think that's about from our side, is it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any last questions that you'd want to ask us as well, or anything else that you still feel maybe confused about or anything like that, please let us know. Um, yeah.
just one clarification probably. We are doing this in the context of the fact that we're going to be working actively on problem identification phase for the fellows in the next well, 1.5 months, I guess, because they will be piloting, assuming they figure out what the actual problem they want to work on is in January by then. We want to then get them to pilot before the end of the academic year. So that is the context for today's space and why it's also not gone entirely into the 15-month plan and project management in general. That's one thing I wanted to share.
So honestly, I don't think we prepared case studies because this is very problem specific, right? And so when a question comes up, and then you also start thinking, oh, is there something else to this? What is the other perspective here? What are some other factors? So we don't have a case study. I will check if we have some recordings that might help. So we did recordings of these conversations that we had with the fellows. I can definitely check if there is something and share that with you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Mawa, can you make a note of it? I'll check in our drives if there's anything. Yeah, I think if there are no other questions, we can close the call. I hope this was useful. Not sure how much, but I hope it did give some idea in the first few months at least.
Thank you so much, you guys. Please let us know even by email if there are any other questions or anything else that we can help with. Thank you for engaging. I think it was quite an interactive session as well. Yes, thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Before we drop off,
sorry.
one thing for sure. I'm aware that for some people, you might have already done these change projects with Teach for India. But for others who haven't or would like to test it out in this context, would be amazing if you picked a project of your own in the next quarter, probably, and run it along with the fellows. Sounder, I wanted to give a shout out. Sounder is already doing something similar. He's working on a library initiative in Trichy right now. But maybe just framing it in the whole context of a project itself and running through the exercise ourselves so that we also get to experience what it feels like to run with a project. Yeah, maybe something you can pick up with Manasa or with any of us. Then if anything else to be added, like more operational parts of things, like what next everyone can expect from our end. I put Philip on the spot, so he's turning around and giving me this very puzzled look. Okay, so we will probably orient the fellows in person. We'll have a plan for that. Would be great if all of you pick this up in your AAR debrief conversations as well. Debrief flow has been shared already, and we'll come back again either in December or early Jan for part 2. Yeah. Thank you, Mahua and Anshuman, for taking out the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Mahua, I'll probably catch up with. Do you have 5 minutes? We can stay back.
Yeah, sure.
Now, yeah. Any quick thoughts or reflections on your session overall?